Hello, puppies and kittens. As with everything else going on, one of my viewers, this is Tony Phillips. How you do? Uh,
Good.
he he reached out to me because he wanted to talk about Ray Comfort, and that just takes me back because I started my career talking about grifters like Ray Comfort, and warning about how all of these young earth creationists, evangelicals, and all this building on Christian nationalism and what that was going to do to the country. And I remember doing this 15, 20 years ago, and damn it if I wasn't right. Oh, yeah, yeah. So this is almost going to be like stepping out of the news to go back to better days when I only had to worry about the impending threat rather than the looming one that these idiots brought on. What inspired you, Tony, to talk about Ray today?
Okay, well, I had a number of things that I thought were possible topics, but I think Ray would have been the best because, he covers a lot of things. I can go on and on about Ray Comfort. Like when I listen to his videos, I just find intellectual dishonesty in just about everything he says. Like he says, he has a way of infuriating with me, even on things I technically and somewhat agree with. He's just so inconsistent. Have you noticed that?
I've noticed that the
And
things
intellectual. What?
that he says, things that he has to know are not true. There's no way. He's one of those people that absolutely knows that he's full of shit. He clearly knows that he's lying.
Okay,
And
that's okay. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that I've never really been able to figure out just whether he's lying or he really believes what he's saying or what.
No, he definitely cannot. He
You
cannot believe what
say,
he's saying. He knows better.
do you think it's possible he's an atheist?
I don't. He makes he makes millions of dollars running this scam.
Initially, I didn't know that he's
He lives in a 2-story house in Malibu or Monterey. I can't remember, somewhere close to the beach in California. And he has a video production company of people work in his house that package up his videos to distribute it, all over the country. And he's got a hell of a grift that is so easy to do, just being stupid and using the same argument for 20, 30 years. Have you ever told a lie? Well, that means you're a liar.
Oh, yeah. Always the same thing is the way
always the same. So there's no talent involved in what he does. I mean, he just plays dumb and gets people. He plays dumb and lies and gets people outraged. And then believers, the wanna pretenders, give him money. And give you an example of that. He went and spoke at Prestonwood Baptist Church here in the Dallas area, and they have a 7,500 seat stadium sanctuary. Just think about that. Just the size of that fucking church. 7,500 seats. And they had him speak for 30 minutes, telling the same exact stupid bullshit that he always does, but they paid him $1,000 a minute to do it.
Yeah, I didn't know that about Ray Comfort. It just kind of, I may not have thought much about it, but it kind of seems like he's rather poor. He goes around telling people that he just kind of, he doesn't come across like these rich evangelicals like like Joel Osteen today.
Yeah.
But he's more like him.
Doesn't come across like that.
Like back in the day, like in the early 90s, like Jimmy Swaggart or somebody that's really corrupt. Robert Tilton. I think you're familiar with them, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Those were like the people that got me started. Yeah. I remember Bobby Tilton, especially. Bobby Tilton was featured on a Motorhead album where they did a song called "Bad Religion," and they quoted Bobby Tilton, where he goes, "Let's say you want to worship Jesus for $500. Let's say you want to worship Jesus with $1,000. All I'm asking is a vow of faith." That guy too was such an obvious grifter. I don't understand how people. You have to know that this guy is lying to you, right? But I know so many people, even in my own family,
I mean, those guys are obviously doing it for profit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I had a friend at the time. That's about when I was just starting to start college. I had a friend that was snowed totally by Robert Tilton. And he was also
he brought in a scandalous amount of money, like $9 million a year, something crazy like that. It's just amazing that you can dupe people so shamelessly, telling these ridiculous lies. There was a guy named Marjo Gortner who had a brief acting stint in the 70s, but prior to that, he was one of these traveling tent preachers until he decided that he couldn't bear lying to people anymore, because that's what the job is.
He knew he was lying to people.
He knew he was lying.
I just can't in good conscience do this because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't remember what the documentary was that he did, but he hired a film crew to come in backstage as he's preparing for one of these shows and to record the shows. And so he would explain to them how the grift works. And when you make these statements out to the audience, how this is going to manipulate the audience into donating more money, right? Because that's what it's all about. You don't care about anybody. You don't care about people. You don't care about their needs or anything. You're just pleading that the more desperate people are, the more irrational their requests for a savior, for some kind of salvation. My mother, for example, when she's at her poorest, would donate more money when she doesn't have any, because she's increasingly desperate, which makes her give her more money so that she gets blessings, which are like literally magical enchantments, so that she will have, it's essentially like having better luck. She'll have better luck if she gives away more of her money to the church who is lying to her when she's already broke.
Oh yeah, about that same time we're talking about, my dad's mother, my grandmother on my dad's side, gave a lot of money to Oral Roberts.
Oh yeah.
I remember talking to some kids in college laughing about it, that he was the one that said that God was holding him hostage and was going to strike him dead by a certain date.
He's using extortion. By the way, I just want to, Gordon loves science. Keep up the good work, Aaron. Thank you for the 1999. Thank you for so much for that. I don't have a producer today, so it'll be a little hard for me to look at the chat and all of that. Oral Roberts, he had a guy working for him. He was one of his security guys, and this guy had he was a little bit more inquisitive. He said he had seen the kids go up there in the wheelchair, and then Oral Roberts touches them, and then they can stand up and suddenly do Irish jigs. Okay, so but this guy, the security guy, because he was with the police and everything, he had a private prior career. He wanted some kind of verification, something that he could show that wasn't just somebody that sat down in a wheelchair long enough to be pushed up on stage and got up and walked again. He wanted verification that somebody actually had a diagnosed condition that the doctors couldn't cure, and that there was some medical confirmation that after this moment, that person was cured. He wanted some level of proof. And he's working security for Oral Roberts. He's at this the Oral Roberts private dwelling. I forget what they call that. And he's trying to talk to the man. He just wants one name. Give me one name that he can investigate, so he can assure his faith. And he kept pressing Oral Roberts. And this is in the guy's testimony. He said, Oral Roberts said, finally responded, "There's a lot of exaggeration in this business."
Yeah.
That's his
mildly, to put it mildly.
Yeah, so he knows he's lying. Bobby Tilton knows he's lying. Oral Roberts knew he was lying. The 900-foot Jesus is going to raise the city of faith, and if you don't give me this amount of money, then God will take me to heaven. Really? So how is that supposed to motivate me? The problem was there was too many people that sat back and say, "I want to see this," and that didn't happen. Yeah. Of course.
Right, they sent in the money.
Yeah, well, when people didn't donate the $9 million for the extortion because, oh my God, he's going to go to heaven, he ended up coming back with a lesser offer. So, I mean, God is bargaining down? What the fuck does God need money for anything anyway? He created the universe.
So what does he need money for?
He can plug one nostril and blow out an entire cosmos. So why not just, hey, you want a building? Poof, a building.
I didn't remember that he didn't meet his quota on the money people sent in.
Yeah. So I mean, the whole thing is
you're saying, because I didn't. Yeah, I don't
frustrates me that. It frustrates me that a lot of the people who believe in this shit who cause simpler-minded people to ruin their lives over this crap, they know that they're full of shit. They know it.
Okay, so that would include Ray Comfort. You're pretty sure?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my favorite lie from Ray Comfort was one that this is just so stupid. Ray is talking. He got onto the 777, the 700 Club with
Kirk Cameron.
No. That the grizzled old asshole that ran the Christian. He ran a Trinity broadcast channel. What the hell was this guy's name? I hated this guy for so long, and he's dead now. But anyway, he was one of the big deals. Ran for president at one point in the 80s. Yeah, wish I could remember that horrible person. But Ray Comfort gets on his show.
Oh,
what
would it possibly be Jerry Falwell?
No, but a friend of his. Remember the Trinity Broadcast Network, also known as the Christian Coalition. Pat Robertson. Thank you.
Yeah, that name rings true.
Yeah. There's people in the chat told me who it is. I can't believe I couldn't think of that name. But and then Pat Robertson is a patent liar too. He was on. No. I'm thinking about a different one right now. So I'll skip that for the moment. Makes me want to jump to that. Anyway, Ray Comfort. He gets on the show with Pat Robertson. He's on the 700 Club. And so he says, let's pretend that I'm an evolutionist for a moment. That there's a big bang, life forms begin, because Big Bang creates life in his analogy, right? It's not like this is something that happened and then 10 billion years later, something else happened. No,
Big Bang had nothing to do with
Big Bang causes life. And he said that there's a first dog was created by the Big Bang, I guess, and it suddenly grew eyes, legs.
I was going to mention something like this.
Yeah,
he said there was another instance he has these videos where he's interviewing people, asking them like, have you ever lied before? Have you ever stolen? Have you ever looked with lust? He was interviewing this young college student, and he asked him, do you believe in evolution? And he said, yeah. And he said, well, tell me, how could two people suddenly, who hadn't grown eyes yet, suddenly find each other and fall in love? And he said people. He didn't even say dogs. He said people. Like...
Yeah. It hadn't grown eyes yet.
Apes have eyes, apes have eyes, going back to... everything had eyes. Eyes were only starting out in the sea millions and millions of years ago.
Yeah.
As clusters of cells. So, and what got me is, this guy seemed to go along with it. He said something like, well, I've never really thought of it that way, or something like that. And my big question is, how come that the student in college didn't call him out on that and say, hey, whoa, that's ridiculous?
It's a frustrating thing to me when I talk to people. If I try to explore
about the kid,
if I try to explore where their mind is, sometimes I find that people are fantastically stupid, beyond what I could have imagined. So in the case of the Ray Comfort story, he's telling a story about where a lump of sausage sits around for millions of years, because that's what Big Bang and a lump of sausage was created by the Big Bang, and it sits around for millions of years. And then it suddenly grows eyes, legs, and a tail, and then has to go look, it becomes a first dog, and then it has to go look for a female dog, another lump of sausage that suddenly grew eyes, legs, and a tail to become exactly the same thing with exactly the same DNA. And the guy he's read Darwin's book.
Yeah, he's read Darwin's book, because I remember there was one time where he and Kirk Cameron were giving out copies of Darwin's Origin,
bastardized
intro that was defending creationism or something like that.
Just absolute idiocy, and everything about that. I mean, so when you talk about the people with no eyes that suddenly have to look for a female of the same species, does he have absolutely no idea about how different varieties or different ethnicities of people or different varieties of any life form, how they diverge from a population, not an individual? He doesn't understand any of that. I know it's been clarified for him thousands of times that we are talking about population level changes. That means males and females.
Have to know he's telling a falsehood when
he knows
that particular straw man. He'd have to know that he's just flat out lying.
He knows.
I don't know why people like that one kid just didn't call him out on it. I mean, you don't have to be especially well educated in science to see that that's just Looney Tunes.
So that's the frustration I have in dealing with creationists anymore, is they know they're full of shit. Every apologist knows they're full of shit. Let me see. Paul 691 offers $50. Thank you so much, and says, "Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you from the heart, man. Thank you. I mean, I need all the help I can get, sincerely." But on these people, the apologists, the people that I argue with online, I'm always looking for a sincere believer. I get messages all the time, almost every day. Seriously, still, after 20 some odd years of doing this, maybe 30 now, I get messages almost every day from people thanking me for something I said or something I showed somewhere that got them thinking. And people always do to thank me for helping them work their way out of religious delusion. But the people I argue with online, one time in my life, I'm able to find a believer who believes sincerely because they really thought that was the truth. And then when I'm talking with them, working them out, I ask them questions. They ask me questions. We have an interaction. We have an intellectual exchange. She has an incorrect belief. I can show why that's correct, why that's wrong, and here's what the actual thing is. Here's the study that shows it. And well, didn't this happen? No, that's here's another article that was written by the very people that and it shows that didn't happen at all. And so they work their way out to realize, okay, look, what they were told to believe is not the truth. And now the truth is a little harder to understand, but they're picking up on it. They ask questions. They're sincere questions. They're questions they want the answers to. This is what a sincere person does. But a religious apologist, and I mean all the defenders of the faith, whether they get paid for it or not, when they get into these arguments with me, they habitually refuse to answer any question at all. They'll duck and they'll dodge and they'll do the Pam Bondi. You ask any number of yes or no questions, and that you will just get deflections and insults and sidetracks and whataboutisms and everything. You'll never get the yes or no that you're looking for. You'll never get an answer that can be interpreted as, is that a yes or is that a no? I have to keep asking. So when you said all of this junk, can we translate that into a yes, or does that translate into a no? You never get it. And they don't ask questions they want the answers to. They only ask questions they think there is no answer to, because they think that not having an answer means that they have the answer. So it's creationism and to some degree religion in general. It's just about lying to yourself. The whole question is not, do you accept science or do you believe in God? No, it's, do you seek truth, or are you a fucking liar who only believes lies? And I know people who will only believe lies. If it's something that we can prove to be true in a minute on Google, they don't want to know that. But if it's something we can prove to be false in a minute on Google, that's what they wholly believe.
That's one thing about that is causing religion to die out slowly.
Yeah. The Democrats want to do post-birth abortions. Really? Let's Google that. Democrats doing post-birth abortion. Look, nothing. Fucking nothing.
Well, one thing I just kind of assumed about Ray Comfort was that he was, Well, he's mainly concerned, I thought, that he was mainly concerned about the survival of Christianity. And that's basically what apologetics are. It's to defend the faith.
Yeah, well, he doesn't want to have to get a job as a used car salesman, does he?
They start with the faith, and then they try to argue anything to support it. They're not looking for answers. They're always arguing a position. And Ray Comfort, from the way he evangelizes, he thinks the best way to gain converts is to basically scare people. It's basically blackmail.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't know. When I deal with Trump, or not Trump, with Comfort, I get that it's just a grift for him. That's all it is.
It's mainly money that he's really after.
Yeah, that's all he cares
he's
about.
defending.
He's
trying to get more converts.
And all he has is this stupid little shtick that he does that sells so well. I mean, like the founder, John Smith, the founder of Mormonism.
Oh, is that Joseph Smith? I think it's Joseph.
Joseph Smith. You're right. Joseph Smith, founder of Mormonism. My family is not aware of this. There's a lot of Mormons in my family. They are not aware that Joseph Smith was arrested in, I think, Seneca, New York, for a scam that he was doing where he was using seer stones to guide people to hidden treasure. Now, there was never any actual treasure. He would just show them where to look for the treasure and then be extremely vague about what those people were expected to find. Receive payment when they begin digging and then disappear. So that's the scam. Then, after he was arrested for that, he was convicted of that, but for whatever reason, the judge didn't want to put this young man at the time in jail. So the judge kind of gave him a probation thing, or he gave him walking papers. You're convicted of this, but you're not going to go to jail. Get out of here. So then Joseph Smith goes out and founds Mormonism on the same scam of using seer stones to then claim that he had found buried treasure in the form of golden tablets written by God. And then all of this huge scam based on that. My family doesn't know that, but there's a guy who ran a scam. It's the same scam. He only knows one scam. So using seer stones. That's the lie he sells, right? He founded a huge religion out of that. He had a massive military force greater than that of the United States at the time. He was ready, when he was finally killed, he was ready to go to war against the United States to take over the United States, to make this an all-Mormon country. And so ManGuy777 offers $50 and says, "Hey, Aaron, I also appreciate you. Thank you so much. I feel, when I live on donations and I see how the economy is, a lot of my donors, if they don't have them, if they're losing their jobs among the tens of thousands of people who are being fired or whatever, and everything else that's going on, just imagine what happens to me, right? So anything that comes my way is ever more appreciated, because, like all of you, I mean, we're all working longer, harder, and faster, but making less and paying more. So evermore, I appreciate the donation. Thank you. And need it. And then we also have Elira the Free, gifted 50 RN Raw memberships. They're all thank you indeed. Thank you. So where were we with this?
Okay. I was going to talk about Ray Comfort and how he evangelizes, because it's pretty much, if it wasn't for the hell doctrine, I don't think Ray Comfort would know how to evangelize. He'd just have to give it up, because there wouldn't be anything to evangelize for.
That's why they invented hell.
And when I was growing up, I initially didn't hear about hell. I heard about heaven, that my folks told me there was a place to go with when you die. And I think maybe it was a kid's book that I found out about hell, and people at school talked about it. And I was, just from the very first start of hearing about that, I was appalled by it. And I thought at the time that the assumption was that if you're bad, you go there. I didn't know it was non-Christians. And I was still appalled by it. One thing I was particularly appalled by was in the Bible. We read in Sunday school about the parable Jesus told about Lazarus and the rich man. You remember that? Lazarus and the rich. You don't remember? Seriously?
I mean, Lazarus, the one was resurrected. I don't remember anything about the.
Yeah, but there was another Lazarus that was in a parable. Okay. I don't think it was. Jesus did not say it was an actual account, but it was a story about Lazarus. He had boils. He was very poor and in poverty. Boils grew on him. He fought with dogs for scraps, and the rich man was living luxury, and he didn't give to the poor. He was a selfish prick, and the rich man ended up in hell. At this point, I want to make something clear about the Bible. It does nowhere in the Bible. I'm very sure this is true. Does it give an example or examples of somebody who went to hell because they were born in the wrong place in the wrong time? But a lot of people do believe that. But as the rich man was there, the rich man was in hell for basically being an a-hole. That's why he was there. But anyway,
Jesus hated rich people, and there was the reason. There's a reason why that most people don't think about. Jesus was the same as Kenneth and Gloria Copeland, the same as Bobby Tilton, the same as Oral Roberts. He was the same as all of these people. Remember that Jesus told his own followers to give him all of their money. And this is the part that believers don't catch on to. Jesus says we're going to give it to the poor. Remember when Bobby Tilton took in millions of dollars, and he said that he was donating to a boys' school in Haiti?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly that.
Okay, well, that's what he said he was doing, and then it turned out that the boys' school didn't exist. So that's Jesus. He's telling you that he's going to give the money to the poor, but really you just give money to Jesus.
Yes. Yeah, I was always thinking he was saying, give up your worldly possessions and follow me, kind of.
Yeah, you can only you can either serve money or you can serve God. So, and he said, don't worry about having enough food left to buy clothes, or don't have to worry about having enough money to buy food or clothes. The Lord will provide. Give me all of your money so I can give it to the poor. That's you can't serve two masters. You either serve me or you serve money. So serve me your money. That's same scam as Bobby Tilton and all of the others.
You would say Jesus was just a scam artist, basically, just like the evangelists
Yep.
Well, there, I don't know. I agree with that, but
well, why else would Jesus tell his followers to give him all of their money?
I think you remember the young rich ruler who said, "There's one thing you have to do more, and that's give up all your worldly." I don't think in that case he said to me, though. He said, "Give your worldly possessions to the poor."
But and who's going to route that money to the poor?
Was that I just thought it was what you'd call very unjust what happened to the rich man, even being the way he was, because there's. He tried to warn Joseph. I think that was his brother. And he said that he would just give anything for one drop of water on his tongue, and he never gets the water. And that disturbed me as a child. Still does disturb me.
Yeah.
Okay. But that guy was a rich jerk. Now, I didn't know at the time that hell was really for non-Christians, or at least that's what a lot of evangelicals like Ray Comfort say it is. So I first got it was actually I did hear some people saying you got to believe or you're going to go to hell, but I didn't know that was the mainstream position. At least for conservative Christianity, that is the mainstream position. I didn't know that till I was in early college, and I got around some preachers that would come out there and just ran. A lot of people made fun of them, but they were just ranting about hell, how you got to believe in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. That was basically college kids, and all of them believed. And that's when I was around, and that was mainly the thing they talked about, how to avoid going to hell.
And of course, they had to invent hell because anybody that thinks about heaven for a few minutes is going to realize it's not such a great thing. And people will tend to, after some deep pondering about heaven, they will choose death.
Okay.
They would rather die than go to heaven.
The fact that heaven goes on and on forever, do you think it'll really be that way? That, of course, you don't believe in heaven, but if there was a heaven,
it's not just that I don't believe in heaven. Let's be clear. We don't have souls. There is no kind of afterlife. Absolutely not whatsoever. Nothing. Okay. When we die, all that was once us, our thoughts, our memories, our personalities, everything is reduced to a few dozen pounds of ape meat going bad.
Okay. I wasn't going to talk about mind-body dualism because we could get into an argument there, which I didn't want to do this time.
Okay.
So should we continue with that?
Mind-body dualism. No afterlife. It's like asking where does your computer go when the hard drive crashes? It doesn't go anywhere. Where does all the data on your hard drive crash?
Well,
when it says operating system not found or hard disk failure, where does all that data go? It doesn't go anywhere. It's gone. It doesn't exist.
I'll say this much. I think that most people who believe in an afterlife and who want to believe and have a need to believe in an afterlife is not so much for themselves as for other people, like lost loved ones and such. And that would include me.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? And I'm talking, I know that's subjective. That's why we want to believe that. And
I've talked to a number of believers who have said things like that I believe because I have to believe. Well, what do you have to believe? That doesn't make any sense. I have to believe that I'm going to see my dead son or my dead father again.
Right.
So there's a completely emotional, irrational, and they know that sometimes they know that even that's not true. I had one person tell me, well, two actually, that told me that they know that what they believe is not really true, but they're going to believe it anyway. Because emotionally they have to believe that, which means what they're telling me is they're going to make believe that. They're going to convince themselves of what they know is not really true.
Okay. Recently, I think maybe I told you that I had some deaths. I guess it's been maybe a little over a year. I did have a death of someone that was close to me. And I know that, when you say that, I'm just thinking it's essentially saying you'll never see him again. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're gone.
And then if you think about how the afterlife would work if there was an afterlife, I would ask questions like this when I was a kid. Okay, so you died, and my mother would tell me that you can't be cremated because on the day of judgment, our bodies are supposed to crawl out of our graves and be alive again. And this is where Joseph Smith was borrowing from the Muslim belief.
Okay, so I thought maybe there was something like that in Revelation.
Well, my mom was Mormon, and I know that there's parallels.
We're all going to be living on Earth.
Yeah, in physical bodies and all of that. And so I asked my mom, well, what about if you can't be cremated because you have to have a body in order to crawl out of your grave? Then what about all those people that were torn apart by dogs or swallowed by sharks or whatever? Right? Their bodies are not going to. If you can restore the body that was eaten by the shark or that was pulled apart by dogs or whatever, then you can restore the one that was roasted to ash. What the hell? Why do we need physical bodies for this anyway? I thought we were talking about spiritual life. But yeah, none of it makes any sense. And then we're all going to be young and perfect again like we were when we were 25 or 30. All right. Well, that's going to make visiting grandma a little strange. And
might not recognize her.
What about the kids that died before they got to be this prime age? Oh, well, they'll still be kids. They're going to be children forever and ever and ever. Oh, well, we won't need to, we won't want to be adults. We won't have our desires anymore. If we don't have anything that makes us us, why do we exist in heaven? Oh, so we can worship God. What the fuck does worship mean? Praise how wonderful he is. Is he all knowing? Does he not fucking know? If you're the most powerful being in existence and you have a tribe of ants, in your yard, do you care what their opinion is? Individual ants? Why the fuck would you? And if you really were benevolent and wonderful, you wouldn't want them to be showering you with praise. I mean, just think about how old that would get immediately, right? I couldn't stand being on an elevator with a bunch of people who love me and want to praise me like that. How uncomfortable would that elevator ride be? I'm only going up 4 floors with a handful of sycophant fans. That's really wonderful. I want to be nice. I really do care, but I can't be listened. And I feel the constant compliments are kind of insulting because maybe I'm going through an imposter syndrome or something. I don't need it. Why would a God need it? Only a narcissistic asshole would want that.
You wouldn't think that a truly benevolent God would just want to be showered with praise. And that's
right.
Another thing that I thought about, that, when they say that, things like that, I just think, well, doesn't that kind of reflect badly on God's character?
Exactly. As does the whole notion of hell.
Yeah, the hell doctrine is the worst. Let's see what I was getting into. That my own experience was, and then Ray Comfort's argument. That's about all he uses. He comes on with, "Have you ever lied before? Have you ever stolen before? Have you ever looked with lust?" Okay, let's see what I've got. I see why it's inconsistent here. I think Ray Comfort's side, when some younger evangelicals tried to do the same thing with me in college. You got to believe because you're going to go to hell, basically what they're saying. And it's the same thing Ray Comfort's saying. It sounded to me like them and Ray Comfort, basically, they're presenting a case, they're making an argument that God is unjust. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
and God is unjust. I mean, why would, if you believe that hell exists, then your God is unjust.
Okay. I was watching a video just a while ago, in fact, that talked about some people believe in annihilationism. And it said that Kirk Cameron started believing in annihilationism not too long ago. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know
really care.
Literally just today, I didn't know that he believed that, but some of the other people disown him because of that. And what Ray Comfort is saying when he argues about hell, he's also saying that basically he agrees that any little sin, like if you stole so much as once in your life, or you looked with lust as much as once in your life, you deserve eternal torment. And what I've always had wondered about, does he really honestly believe that people like you and I deserve eternal torment for something like, I'm saying like this, like when he asks somebody, have you ever looked with lust? Have you ever looked at a woman with lust? And he's saying that if you see someone you think is hot, and you say, wow, look at her, then for that, you deserve to just suffer forever, never be forgiven. You're going to torment trillions of years to the end of time. And I don't see why people can't see that there's something morally unjust about that. That isn't, I know you see what I'm saying, but that's what he's literally saying when he says, if you so much as look at a woman with lust one time in your life, you deserve to suffer forever.
Infinite punishment for a finite crime.
Why don't people question that?
Paul 691 offers $10. Thank you very much.
Most people do not.
Phrase abracadabra. Thank you very much for that, Paul. Yeah. If God is loving, if God is a father, and you do something wrong, the God is going to be, the father would be disappointed, right?
He'd
The father
punish
would,
you, but he wouldn't do something
he
like that.
might, he might punish you if it would do some good, because the punishment has to be able to do some good, right? Or why else do it? Now, the reason you punish somebody it is because you don't know a better way to get them to deter bad behavior. So you punish somebody so they don't do that same thing again.
Right, with that
Throwing
possibility.
throwing somebody into lava forever is they don't even have an opportunity to do the thing again. So there's no lesson to be learned. So they have to be able to come out of the lava and live, and then decide, hey, I don't want to do that again because I don't want to be thrown into lava. So there's no point there's no rehabilitation in hell. It's just vindictive. It's not even vengeance. It's just vindictive that, hey, you didn't absolutely follow exactly what I said. You didn't, and what by I don't mean God. I mean the guy pretending to speak for God. So the clergy says, do exactly as I say, or else suffer the fate of a threat worse than death. Absolute bullshit. Obvious bullshit. The entirety of religion is a pure scam. And I had a conversation about Ray Comfort when I dissed him previously in a blog post, I think it was, that somehow he read. And I don't know why, but he sent me a check for $1,000. Okay.
Why would you do that?
I was so broke when that check showed up. Yes, I cashed it. And I don't understand why the fuck.
So, I don't know why, but I know that I can think of some other things that Ray Comfort, especially Ray Comfort, says that are just inconsistent. Like, it just kind of gets on my nerve just watching him evangelize, because he's got these videos that he has when he interviews people and goes through the same routine. And he has said, it would just break my heart if you went to hell. The reason I'm out here is trying to save you from going to hell, because I would just he has literally said this, by the way, it would just break my heart to have God justly torment you in hell. So he's saying that if he really thinks that hell is just, why would it break his heart?
And hell can't be just. There's no possible.
He says it is. He says it's just. And he also says that, if you believe in Jesus, he can legally dismiss your case and he can justly let you go. And that kind of means if he tells people about hell, they accept Christ, then that's God's justice. And if they don't hear about God, or they reject God, they go to hell, that's just too. So
yeah, translate that to
it's just either way.
Yeah, let's translate believe in Jesus. Let's translate that into obey the clergy. Obey me, the priest or pastor or whatever, who's telling you to do all of this.
Because he wants to get, he wants more.
He wants all your money, all of it. He wants your labor. He wants you to work for him for free, do volunteer work for him. Oh, and give him private access to your children, alone time.
I guess one thing I didn't really get that he was like these other evangelicals is because he tries to convert people, but he doesn't ask for a donation. I've never seen him ask for a donation.
Who are you talking about?
Ray Comfort. Because I haven't seen his church, that you were talking about. I've just seen him being basically a street preacher.
Yeah, they're included on all of his videotapes and pamphlets. There's means of financial support.
Okay, I think I have seen some of those.
Yeah. I mean, he's making bank. I remember seeing, I don't know, 15 years or so ago, I remember seeing that he was making something like $4 million a year back then.
Okay. Another thing about him is that sometimes, I guess I just mentioned it kind of, that he gives a court case analogy.
Yeah.
For God, and it has to do with penal substitutionary atonement. You've heard of that. There's also the penal substitutionary atonement of Jesus Christ dying for your sins. So
scapegoating.
Case can be
Yeah.
dismissed. There's another one which I don't quite understand. It's called ransom theory. It's about ransom to the devil, and Jesus is interceding. So there's different theories about just how the atonement works. And I didn't particularly like the penal substitution atonement, which is what Ray Comfort's using. But, from what I've read about in the Bible, and there's a reference to it in Isaiah, back in Isaiah, I believe, it does seem like that penal substitutionary atonement is biblical, basically.
Yeah, it's scapegoating.
You would agree with it. It's
Yeah, that's like when Abraham wanted to Abraham was going to kill his son. And God says, no, bro, just kidding. But he can't just let him off. Abraham now has to go and slaughter a goat in place of his son because somebody's got to die. So unconditional love comes with conditions. And Jesus' sacrifice for us all, where he defeated death and all that, except that we all still die. We don't actually get saved because he did it. We only get saved if we believe it. And by believe it, we mean, we really mean we have to obey. We have to do good works, or we have to do what the clergy says. And it has to be do good works on faith, which means we have to do what the clergy tells us to do.
I think that's why the Catholics were taking advantage of that and making money. You have to do what we say. Our faith without, they were abusing the passage in James that says faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
And then the Protestants, like Martin Luther, went too far in the other direction. Okay. That's something else. So I think my point is about Ray Comfort's evangelical methods is that, that type of argument about the hell doctrine drove me away from Christianity. It did exactly the opposite of what it was intended to do. And what do you think about how effective is that really in getting converts? Essentially using spiritual blackmail to get converts, just how effective is that? Well, because I would think it would drive more people away, but
the Mormon majority in my family didn't concern themselves with hell because it is a different construct. So while they have to, on one hand, admit that there's a hell in Christian theology, and they consider themselves a subset of Christianity, on the other hand, it's not really a thing in Mormon theology where everybody gets their own planet. So it's a whole different structure. So hell, when I read the Bible as a kid, and I come across the thing about of hell and some other books on theology and whatever, I realized that hell cannot be real. It is too obviously just an empty threat. For the reason I just said, believe the clergy, do as I say, or I'll hit you with this empty threat of a fate worse than death, which is so far over the top. You're being roasted alive, and you never get consumed. You just always feel incredible pain, and you never get numb to it. It's so utterly ridiculous and purposeless. There's no point in it, right? Well, if you can't enjoy any wonderful pleasure, in for eternity in heaven, because nothing for eternity is still going to be great. Well, the same thing going on in hell. There's no way, if a God existed, hell would not. If it was a benevolent God, hell could not exist. God wouldn't allow it. If it was an apathetic God, God wouldn't care enough to make it. There'd be no purpose for it. There's no purpose for it.
Well, the purpose is actually, Ray Comfort talks about justice. God will justly punish you in hell, or he can justly let you off. Yep. The fact is, he doesn't care about justice. The purpose of hell doesn't have anything to do with justice. And I kind of figured that out late in life. It has nothing to do with justice. It has to do with, well, like I said, it has to do with getting more converts.
Exactly. More money, more labor.
And I kind of doubt that it works that well, because it doesn't seem like most people in church are there because they're afraid.
Somehow they all think they're going to
heaven because they're scared to death. They'd be going to church because they're just scared.
And it doesn't work. Your prison statistics, criminal statistics always show that the more religious people are the worst criminals, they're the more frequent criminals. Atheists are barely represented in prison, something like 1%.
I think,
and we're talking about people that were already Christian before they committed their crimes. We're not talking about people who claimed to be atheist and then converted to Christianity after they go to prison. I'm
sure some of them are like that. But
I'm sure. No, we're talking about when it went at the point when they committed their crimes. So atheists very low underrepresented. Strangely, Mormons are very low in prison populations too. But Protestants and
Catholics are both up there.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I've heard you mention that before. One question I have about I have a question about that, because I haven't read the statistics. I don't know. But it kind of sounds like that Christianity is breeding crime. So why would that be exactly? Do you think that would be overrepresented as in part of the prison population?
People adopt religion largely because they're frustrated and they're scared. And this is especially the case when they don't understand things already. So they're looking for some literally magic way to solve their problem. But they still have the problem. So when the solution doesn't show up, they still are desperate. And they will also believe that God forgives. And all you have to do is ask forgiveness. So like Emo Phillips said, I prayed for a bicycle. He didn't get a bicycle. So he did what God said. He stole a bicycle and asked for forgiveness. Let's see. Paul 691 offers $10 again. Thank you very much. I feel sorry for the children getting brainwashed. I do as well. I do. I hate the fact that I was so grossly misled. I was cultivated to be an idiot, to be credulous. I was told that only gullible people, they didn't phrase it this way, but if only believers would understand this beauty that only believers can see, that skeptics, people who only wanted to know the truth, well, they would be cynics and they don't appreciate. I do appreciate. I've run into so many believers in my life who think that the real world is just this horrible travesty, that there's nothing good in it. It's just this repugnant thing that we have to endure before we get to the great reward. Like, okay, so you can't appreciate what's real. And so when you don't get the not real, when you don't get the reward, well, fortunately, when you die, your brain just shuts off. There's nothing left. So you don't even have an opportunity to be disappointed.
If that's the case, when I die, I think I would like it if right before I go out and I have no more conscience than a rock, before that happens, I hope I'll have time just to satisfy my curiosity to think, just as it starts to fade, oh shit, Aaron was right. And I'm gone. Because I would die with my curiosity satisfied.
I argue with believers hundreds of times. It's come up to me. You'll find out the day you die.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Right? I'm like, no.
What do you do with people? What do you say to people who say you'll find out? Just wait till you die. How do you respond to something like that?
The argument is usually really vacuous. It's on a point that they've already lost. So they're saying you'll find out later. No, I already know now. We can already prove it now sufficiently, because everything is provisional. They want absolute proof. No, I'm sorry, but we can go to the 99th percentile. I got everything here. And I debated Ray Comfort once. Did you know that?
Yeah, I think I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew you debated him.
Hitchman 84 gifted 10 RN Raw memberships. Very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so in the debate that I had with Ray Comfort, he tried a bunch of lies that didn't work on me because I already knew the angles, the back angles for everything he was doing. And so he said that there's never been a transitional species between humans and apes, as he put it. Right? Okay, well, let's prove that. If there was, what would we be looking for? So if we're talking about the transitional species between humans and apes, what would the features be? How would you identify it? Let's just know what we're talking about. What would a transition between the primitive apes and the most primitive people that we know of, what would that transition look like? Exactly how would we recognize those features? And I said the words, what would you look for? And his answer was, oh, I wouldn't, because I'd know that I'm a man of, or I'm a child of God. You wouldn't.
It sounds like
you're not going to have the conversation. We can't even discuss what it would look like. What would a transitional species look like? You can still adamantly say that there isn't one, but how do you know that if we don't know what the criteria are?
This is what a transitional species would look like. You see it?
No, I can't.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, yes. Acanthostega.
Acanthostega, that's correct.
No, is that Tiktaalik?
No, it's Acanthostega.
This
company makes a Tiktaalik.
Okay.
Couldn't get a hold of that one, but this one somebody had on eBay.
Nice.
See, these are literally just between a fin and a leg.
Yep.
This is just
is my favorite transitional species.
A more perfect transitional species than this.
It is the Darwin fish. And then say we have Salty Bits 9954 says offers $5 and says thanks, Mr. Raw. Thank you very much. All right, so I've done entirely too much talking when I was expecting you to dominate the conversation, and I just have run roughshod over it all. So I'm going to just let you go. I hope you have some bullet points, right?
I got some more points I want to make about Ray Comfort, but I noticed that they all kind of relate back to the same thing, how he's using extortion. And I don't know, it looks like to me that extortion would drive people further away.
Do you remember when he went to prove God on television?
Well,
I think he had Bashir as a moderator at a debate. He was doing an atheist response group. I can't remember their name. And then it was him and Ray Comfort, and they're going to prove in front of a live audience on stage in this big theater that God exists.
Okay.
Yeah. By offering no evidence whatsoever.
They do.
Yeah. They offered a straw man to disprove evolution by calling for a crocoduck. And misrepresenting what evolution is. And then on the assumption that if evolution is false, then that means that creationism is true. So there's the binary fallacy in there as well. And then have you ever told a lie, which means you have a conscience, which they jump to their own. So they do their question begging fallacy to assume that there's a God. It was so disappointing for sincere believers. I've seen the people commenting about that. They went in here expecting that Ray Comfort was going to reaffirm their faith with this bold claim that they're going to prove God. And then they walk out, the people who walked in Christian walked out atheist because of Ray Comfort.
I'm not surprised, especially with that crocoduck. I think it was Kirk Cameron that suggested the crocoduck. And if he was right about that shows evolution is false. Well, that would show evolution is true, which is kind of what he's saying, I guess. Then you should expect in the fossil record things like griffins, Pegasus, stuff like that. Things are one animal and one part another. And Ken Ham actually said that there was an animal like that was made of different parts. God stuck different parts from totally different species together. And that showed the creation was true. And I guess he's got the right track of mind. That would show that's more an argument for creation. What his definition of creation is an evolution. You know what? Can you guess what animal he's talking about?
Platypus.
Right.
Yeah.
That he took the bill of a duck, the body of an otter or a beaver, and the spur of the fang of a rattlesnake, something like that. And of course, we have fossil platypuses through the fossil record. I think going back to the Cretaceous.
Yeah, I made a video about that, and platypus and echidna are both monotremes. They are the last remnants of what all mammals used to be. They all used to be egg layers with a lower body temperature than modern mammals have. There were a bunch of them, multituberculates, triconodonts. There was a whole bunch of them once upon a time, all gone. That's the efficiency of God and having all the species get on Noah's Ark, so that 99% of everything that has ever lived comes off of Noah's Ark and dies instantly.
Well, either way, even if you believe in creationism, God let a lot of animals, most species, die.
Yeah.
Okay. One other thing I was
intermediates, not just fossil intermediates, but also embryological indications and genomic confirmation of ancestry.
And things like vestigial organs.
Yeah.
Whether they're repurposed or not, vestigial organs, I don't really see why they continue to tell blatant lies like there are no transitional forms. You don't get a much bigger lie than that.
Well, they don't like to give definitions, or if they do, they'll use wrong definitions. So they insist in the case of vestigial forms that it has to be useless, which is not what vestigial ever meant. Vestigial means that it's it's reduced in size or function from its previous function. It may have been repurposed for something else, but it has diminished capacity for what it was originally designed for. And one of the examples that I make for this is snakes. We have fossil snakes that had legs.
The back legs?
Just the back legs, and the back legs are so ridiculously tiny that they can't have been used for walking. They still have the 5 toes and all of their full-on legs, but they can't be used for walking. And we have modern skinks and such. We have modern lizards whose legs, they have 4 legs.
They have almost
so reduced that they can't be used for what it previously was. And we can see that in the past, they were bigger. The legs were bigger in the past, in the same type animal. So that would be a vestigial trait. Anything that is reduced in size and function doesn't have to be useless, can be useless, but doesn't have to be. And another good example, I had a pet emu for a few years. I dearly loved that bird until the city told me the city told me I couldn't keep it.
Tiny little arms. He had tiny little arms with a single claw.
Yep, exactly. And there's no reason, there's absolutely no function on that claw. The bird has no muscularity to move its arms. It's like little T-Rex arms, but instead of 2 fingers, it's got 1. Little tiny T-Rex arms, and it can't do anything. So what the fuck is the claw for? It literally cannot do a thing.
It's a remnant of a dinosaur claw.
By both definitions, the right one and the wrong one, we have examples of vestigial features. And creationists can only lie about that, knowing that they're lying.
T-Rex arms and another dinosaur, the Carnotaur family, I think Abelosaurs also had very much reduced forearms, and they were in the process of becoming very, very small. They would probably have disappeared eventually.
Carnotaurus, I think, is from an earlier line that convergently went the same way. They also had the hugely reduced arms, but this was before the lineage where when they still had 4 fingers before they lost that one. So the entire line of Maniraptors, they all had 3 fingers, but the Carnotaurus has 4 or 5, and it's because it branched off in an earlier group.
4 or 5, they're just really, really tiny.
Really tiny, utterly useless. Except possibly repurposed in mating.
Could be. I had another point I was going to make about Ray Comfort. He also argues that there's no good human beings.
There's no what?
I think no good, truly good human beings. And then there's the idea that, God's definition of good is perfect. As long as you know, if you're morally, you have any moral flaws at all, or if you've ever committed one single sin in your life, then you're evil.
Yeah, but the word good means
good
not great.
Doesn't mean perfect, but that's
right.
The way
it doesn't mean great. It doesn't mean perfect.
I'm saying.
It doesn't mean excellent. It means better than bad.
No, but the way he's using it, it means God demands that you're perfect.
Yeah, well, he's using it wrong.
But what's inconsistent about that is that's not in. He gets, I think, from Romans 5:18, where it says there's no. So he is getting it from the Bible, where Romans 5:18 says that there's no one who does good. There's no, no. It's all have fallen short of the Lord, but he says that there's no one who is righteous, not even one. And that's inconsistent because in other places in the Bible, it talks about righteous people. Wasn't Noah supposed to be righteous? So where do they get that? Where does the Bible get that? It's not
Noah
just
and Lot, right? They're both the same. They were both the only righteous dude. They also ended up naked drunks molesting their children.
So how is it that they're righteous?
Well, that's just what God likes. I look around the religious
in the Bible that I wonder about who wrote it. That they weren't a very good writer because they had so many inconsistencies, there's too many flaws in the pot. And you think that if the Bible is fiction, people just made it up, they would probably want to make God a better character. They wouldn't have him wiping out the entire earth, wiping all the people off and all the animals. They wouldn't have things like the slaughter of the Midianites or the Canaanites.
The problem with the Bible is that it is a compilation of different books written by different people, different styles, different agendas, different religions, different concepts of God. And these are all compiled and reinterpreted in context with each other when it doesn't match because these books don't match, right? So some of the stories in the Bible are straight up fairy tales, pure and simple. They're fairy tales. Some are fables, some are legends. And most of it is folklore, but not absolutely all of it.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff concerns real people and places. A lot of it concerns real people and places for events that never happened. And a few of them are local folklore about events and people and places that did happen, just not the magical stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's very little of anything that really happened. It's all
there's a lot of stories like that. They get embellished like Chinese whispers.
Oh, yeah. And then rewritten and interpolated and all of this over time so that the older copies show things that the newer ones don't. And other, additions, subtractions, and so forth. And like it says in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it is a sin to add to or subtract from these works. But then the Christians added to it and subtracted books that they didn't like.
Yeah, I'm not knowledgeable about this, but did that happen? People adding to the Bible after that was already written?
Well, the entirety of the New Testament is an addition. But then the New Testament also warns not to add to or subtract from. And then you've got where the Protestants subtracted all of this other shit that only the Catholics kept and so forth, the Apocrypha and whatnot. And there are a dozen or so books from the Old Testament and the New Testament that were removed by human editors. So there's whole books of the Bible that are gone. And it's gone because of people. But the books remaining in the Bible refer to the books that are no longer there. So if God, and nobody can go read them because they're gone, they're lost entirely. So why would God, who's perfectly infallible and all of that, why would God refer to another book of his Bible if he didn't write it? If he wrote it, the book would still be there. There would be a way that book would still be there. If it was written by people, that'd be something else. But why would God, if this is God's word, why would his word refer to some other word of some other person that you can't even read anymore? That was gone shortly after it was written. So it's completely a collection of, it's a cacophony of human fiction, largely myths and legends, fairy tales, and urban legends is mixed in there with a tiny bit of history as well.
Well, I think that Moses got the story of Adam and Eve, assuming you wrote it. I don't know that you believe that Moses existed.
Moses never existed.
I don't think he existed.
No, flat out.
The story came from Egypt, Moses in Egypt, because the Egyptians had a story, creation story very similar to that.
Yeah, well,
Adam and Eve story.
It's prior to Moses, there was a handful. In Mesopotamian folklore, you get a collection of different myths, unrelated myths, but there are elements, and they're all from Mesopotamian mythology. So you take Lilith and the serpent from the Hulapoo tree and from the Epic of Gilgamesh, and you take the legend of Adapa, the first man who was taken before the gods and they're going to offer him the food of life or the food of death. And then he gets warned that they're tricksters and they might poison him. So you take that story, and then you have the other one where Ereshkigal catches Enki walking through the sacred garden of Inanna, and he ate 7 of the fruits that were forbidden for people to eat because they're all within the sacred garden. And so he had all of these. He was cursed 7 times, and then Ninhursag forgave him, and then bore 7 daughters to cure his curses, and one of those daughters was Ninti, the daughter of the rib, for she was created to close the wound to his side. So you take all of these elements, Genesis 2 and 3. Oh, and then there's more. I forget. There's more. There's Enuma Elish, where the gods say, "Let us make man in our image." It's a collection of gods, and so they make a collection of people. There's 7 male, 7 female. They're all in clay figurines. This one matches Genesis 1. So this is where all of that came from. So it's clear where the fairies, the fables and fairy tales came from. They came from earlier inspirations from Mesopotamia mostly, but we also have Greek influences, Egyptian influences. It seems like at times we have even Hindu influences, because we have the thing like where Jacob wrestles with God. There's a parallel in that in the Mahabharata, where Krishna has his friend King Arjuna wrestle some lake god, and in both cases the god cheats and still loses.
One thing I'd like to ask you, because just out of curiosity, is if there was a God, there really was a God, what would you want him to be like?
I can't even think in terms of what if there was a God, it would have to be something that makes some kind of sense.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly wouldn't be a God that wrote the Bible and the Quran and the Book of Mormon and the Adi Granth of the Sikhs and all of this other crap that all contradicts each other and just has everybody warring against each other. I think that a God, if there was one, would be about the way I am about the ants in my yard. Don't really care about their opinion. I like this line out of the Tao Te Ching. It's my favorite line from any religious tome. It says that nature acts without intent, and so cannot be said to be benevolent nor malevolent to anything. I love that. And there's no way that you could pray to God if not telepathy doesn't work. You can't have him help you find your keys. There's no way that God changes the events in our lives. That's another mechanism that people won't describe. If you pray to God, what exactly does God do to answer your prayer? How do you find your keys? Does he tell you where they are? Do they float up and make a jingly sound so that you can find them? I mean, no, your own actions. You eventually find your keys on your own and then credit God for that. That's what happens. So God never does that.
I've prayed to God not to ask for something, but to ask for moral advice.
If there was a God that answered prayers,
I don't ask him to win a football game, find my keys, or something like that.
If there was a God that answered prayers, then I think that there would be a jumbo jet stop midair just short of the Twin Towers in New York. The plane would just stop miraculously, floating in air, and then go find some place to gently be set down. Kind of thing.
If that were true, the one thing I think about that is, I'm not sure exactly that would work, but if that were true, nobody could do evil because they would know that God would stop them. And physical
one of the many paradoxes.
Reason I could say that this is an argument that why God can't do something like that, because he'd also always be disrupting his own physical laws. The universe would be chaos if he did
so
that.
God has to step out and not answer prayers. So the answer to the prayer is fuck you.
But moral advice, I think, is something else. He doesn't have to disrupt any physical laws to do that.
That's why they have the saying about the Lord helps those who help themselves.
Yeah. I always have a problem with that, because how do you know it's not your own efforts, and how do you know God intervened at all? And I remember somebody saying truthfully that does not come from the Bible. I don't know where it comes from, but it doesn't come from the Bible.
Yeah. So the first, go ahead.
I was going to say something else about Ray Comfort. Okay, I talked about how all fall short. We're basically also kind of a turnoff, because he's basically we're out here trying to save people. We're doing this out of the care of our own hearts. I don't think Ray Comfort is doing this out of his own heart. I think he's doing it, I was going to say he's doing it for
he's doing it for the good of his own wallet.
Money, He told me it was money. Let's talk about Ray Comfort movies. The movies he's done with Kirk Cameron and Living Waters. Have you seen any of those?
I have not one of them.
I saw, I definitely saw at least one. It was called Audacity. Have you ever heard of it? It's about how to minister to gay people. That's basically what it's about. And it stars this young actor who's playing the part of a Christian student, and he runs into some people who are gay, and he ministers to them. And one guy says that, no, we're not having anything to do with that. Don't bring that pamphlet into our house. And the other guy says, well, I'll think about it. I'll give it a shot. And anyway, he says, this Christian guy says something to him. He says that, they're going to go to hell. But he said, it's not really about me, what I think. It's about this loving God. He wants to have a relation with you. And you can just tell when you hear that it's Ray Comfort wrote the script. These aren't things that he's ad-libbing or anything. Ray Comfort, it just sounds like something he'd say. But the climax of the movie is when this one lady, I think you met her earlier on, she's a lesbian. Her car stalls on a railroad track, and she doesn't know it. She's worried about starting the car, and this guy comes and knocks on her door and acts like he's crazy or something. He's so frantic, and you think he's a killer or a rapist, something like that. And he breaks in, she screams, he drags her out of the car, and you find out a few seconds later the train hits her car. And do you see the analogy? That's the right word that Ray Comfort is giving there.
Yeah.
You see it?
And so you should be trusting of madmen who are breaking into your car. They're just helping you.
Well, do you see what is, the madman breaking into your car represents the Christians who is evangelizing against homosexuality. You get that?
Yeah.
And the train represents God or hell. And just a few minutes earlier, he was talking about this loving God who wants a personal relationship with you. And I think you see what I've been getting at all this time, this blatant inconsistency with Ray Comfort's evangelism.
Yeah, here's another quote worth sharing. Einstein once said that this universe might be finite, but human stupidity is certainly infinite. And this is what I was saying before. When you talk to somebody deep enough and really get into their head, I'm sometimes alarmed at the cobwebs and shit that I encounter, that the things that some people think are true. I don't want to say believe. There are people genuinely think these things are true, and they're so incredibly wrong. I don't know where to start from. It's like, how do you there's a thing about filling an empty vessel, and you can't pour more knowledge into it. Well, the reason you can't is because your cup is already full of shit. So you have to throw out the false knowledge, wash that out, start over again with something real.
Okay, so there was something else I was going to say about Ray Comfort. I think I've already talked about his anti-evolution argument, or you mentioned it, right?
Some of them, they're all incredibly bad. And none of these people, they'll do a stage debate where they talk past each other. The two opponents talk to the audience, and you can't interrupt the first guy when they're talking. So they get to say their piece, and both of them can be completely full of shit. And then the audience has to decide which one of these potential liars might not be a liar. That's the way it should be. But that's in a stage debate, and so it's all performance, where somebody calls up data supporting it. They can just make these claims. If you've never heard the claim, how can you say that that's a lie? You would have had to have been familiar with it. You would have had to have already read it yourself. So this is why in science they do written debates, where before you reply, every claim made is investigated. So you come back and fact check. You fact checked everything, and you can show exactly what's wrong with all of that before you reply. And then everybody can, and then questions are, because scientific debates are often aimed at each other as much as the audience. And so there are questions put out, there are predictions made about certain experiments or whatever to be done. And so now you have to perform those experiments in order to get the answer. But creationists will not answer even the simplest fucking questions, even when they know the answer. Okay. Here's the definition of evolution given by Berkeley University, or University of California at Berkeley, on their Evolution 101 Beginner's Primer to Evolution, aimed at high school children. So this should be really easy to understand. Do you understand and accept? This is the definition of evolution given by American academic science, secular science courses. No, that's not it. Okay, well, if that's not the definition, and I'm showing you with the link, you can go verify it, then show me what the definition really is. Quote other universities teaching a significantly different, not just the same thing paraphrased, but a significantly different definition. They can't, they won't look it up. They know the definition I presented is the real one, but they can't argue the real one. They can only argue the straw man. They know the straw man isn't being taught anywhere, but everything they believe is a lie, and the only thing they can do to defend it is to lie. And they know that. And that's why they don't answer the questions.
Yeah, I think that's probably because the basic reason for that is because they think that we have to stick with our religion. We've got to believe this, and we've just got to back that up no matter what, because, if we don't, we're going to lose our religion.
Good.
You agree with that? Or is that just too obvious?
Yeah, let's lose the stupid lies that keep us divided and that don't make us moral people. Your God is immoral. The doctrine is immoral. The dogma is immoral. Give it up.
So what actually would you say about what would be, say, a more effective way to evangelize than what Ray Comfort does?
I've been called an atheist evangelist just because of the passion of my arguments at times. But I don't know that evangelism in any sense is ever necessary. It only matters what the facts are. Period. Doesn't matter what you want to believe. Doesn't matter how you feel about it.
People who do believe because they have a psychological need to believe,
From my perspective, let's start out without any beliefs. Let's not have any beliefs at all. We have a body of facts. We want to explain them. We can't explain them absolutely. We cannot explain them absolutely. We can only explain them provisionally. So we have these things line up with this. Okay, so here's an explanation, and it would account for all of these things. So we're going to go with that. We're not going to believe it, but this is the one that's supported. Okay, so you have this alternate explanation. What supports yours? Oh, nothing? Aesop's fables. You got a fairy tale that you like, and so that's it, and that's all, and nothing. Literally nothing else. Oh, some guy told you something when he was stoned? Sorry, that doesn't count either. We have verifiable facts. We have to be able to show that it's true. We can't just be shit. We can't show that's true. So what do you got to support yours? Nothing. But you're going to believe it anyway. That's faith.
You see, well, it's about people having a need to believe. I'll tell you, I want to believe in God, but I want to believe He's good. And Ray Comfort doesn't give much in the way of indicating that God is good. He's pretty much saying the opposite. He's just being inconsistent about it, saying that God's loving on one hand, He loves you, but He's going to burn you forever on the other.
Yeah, I don't see the appeal of believing in a God. Why would you? Why would you want to believe?
Why would you want to believe? I want to believe, like I said, if he's good and He's really, and I think it's kind of linked to mind-body dualism, that you want to see your relatives and your loved ones that you have passed on, eventually see them again.
Okay.
It just breaks my heart I'll never get to see them again. If you're right about that,
I don't know what some people have told me, that they have a God-shaped hole in their heart, and I
might have had that because I kept looking. I kept wanting it to be good. Wanting there to be a God, looking for evidence for Him, and evidence that He's good. And evangelicals were basically driving me away.
I went for years on maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't. That is not an agnostic position. That was I did not believe in a God. I'm in an atheist position. It was a weak atheist, an implicit atheist, if you like. But I didn't have a need or any kind of I've never wanted to believe something that isn't evidently true.
But you were once spiritual, right? You were checking out other religions.
I was, when I thought
that kind of looks like you were searching for something like a God.
I was convinced, because of all the pseudoscience and mainstream media, I was convinced that there was actual evidence for psionics, for astral projection, for telepathy, telekinesis, and a number of other things. I thought that there was a supernatural aspect to the world that had been evidenced by ectoplasm or whatever, because I was a kid, and the mass media, everybody believed in this shit. Even the atheist Gene Roddenberry still believed in supernatural powers like telepathy and all of that. Wrote it into Star Trek. Even Star Wars, full of magic, right? So everybody, even the atheists, believed in magic back in the 70s. So I thought there was a there. I thought there was something there. I'm trying to understand it as best I can. And it was a long, arduous, painful experience to realize that there's no truth to any of it whatsoever. Why didn't you just tell me in the beginning that there's no truth to this, and I wouldn't have wasted my fucking time? So decades of my life believing bullshit.
Do you think there's any possibility that God, if He exists, is hiding the supernatural world from us? I mean, the people have experiences with the supernatural, but nothing that science can pin down. And He's doing it on purpose, so we will believe in Him on faith. What do you think about that idea?
My exploration of transcendental meditation has led me to a completely different conclusion about experiences. I've had many experiences, and I've realized that this is a trick of the mind, and that if you want to believe something, right, when if the way that the spiritualism teaches you to see just beyond what your eyes can see, so you think there's something really there, you think you have some kind of indication in other people's experiences and their testimonies and stuff to imply that there's something really there. You just need to strive to expand your powers of perception to be able to see it. And yeah, you're going to see shit that ain't there. That's what I figured out. and I've experienced many things that even shared experience with other people. And this was the part that really fucked me up. I had some dramatic spiritual experiences that were shared, and these were with people that I knew back in high school and that. And through the power of the internet, you reconnect, you find those people that you haven't seen in decades. And I talked to them about these shared experience. Both of the people that I shared experiences with not only did not confirm what my memory was. It wasn't that they believed it differently, or that they saw it differently, or that they corrected my memory on that. They didn't believe it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And while both of these people were super spiritual in high school when I was, both of them are absolute skeptics now.
Do you know why?
The same reason as me, to realize there's no truth to it.
Okay, well, I think I told you about me and a friend of mine having spiritual experiences. The first time we talked, it was when we were discussing eternal security. Okay. What St. Louis says. Do you remember that?
No, I'm sorry.
Really sorry about my friend's spiritual experience. I'll just talk about his. His was a lot more profound than mine. He was dying of cancer. He had, I think it was stomach cancer.
Okay.
Someone, I think maybe he tried to pray before about it, but he was a church-going Christian, but he was just kind of not nominally a Christian. He's doing it basically with social reasons. And this one lady in the hospital told him to pray like this and see if God answers you. And he did. And he felt love going up and down his body. He said he never felt anything like it. It was just so spectacular.
Yep.
And
been there, done that.
Really, well, a little bit later on, he came back to the church and he started up a new ministry, and he was telling people about God. And I know him, he was a great guy. It was a few years later, his cancer came back and he died of it, like it was suspended. And it looks to me, and we could discuss this, whether morally, I guess would be the right word, but it looked to me like God saved his life and then had a mission for him on earth to bring more people to God, and then took him. Now, my question to you is, how could a trick of the mind make his cancer go away? Because his cancer went away. They found out your cancer's gone. Mm-hmm. Just after that, how could the trick of the mind do that?
The trick of the mind didn't do that. Cancer? The trick of the mind didn't do that. Cancer goes into
just in remission, or what?
Cancer spontaneously goes into remission on its own.
Mm-hmm. It can go into remission, but it happened right after he made that prayer and felt the presence of what he thought was the presence of the Lord filling him up.
Go to a children's hospital. Mm-hmm. Tell anybody this story. On fourth floor of Children's Hospital in Dallas, tell anybody this story. Notice how you don't convince anyone. Notice how the response that you get instead is quite negative.
Well, I'll tell you, that's
because when you only measure the hits and but it happened right after. Yeah, what? Right after? Was it like that minute, or was it weeks later, or something like that? Was it already?
I think it was the next, as I understand it was the next time the doctors checked him.
So was it already in remission before he had his little episode?
Next couple days.
So was it already in remission before he had his little episode? Because I tell you what,
I don't think so. You have to talk to him, but I don't think so.
Okay. I've been to the cancer center in Children's Hospital in Dallas. Prayers don't work. Not ever.
Well, it's interesting that you could say that, because
one other
thing he told me about that was that when he was preaching, he went around preaching because he was convinced it was all true. And some people got angry at him because they had their fathers or sons or relatives die of cancer. And they said that they prayed and prayed and prayed, and the cancer didn't go away. And some of them walked out on. They just didn't want to hear it.
Yep.
But
so some guy,
God,
cancer builds and goes
into
mission,
not for charity, but for a mission.
Yeah, cancer builds and goes into remission on its own, randomly, anywhere, all the time, anyway. So there's fluctuation. It's not always just rampaging out. Sometimes can be, but very often there's a fluctuation where it goes into remission. Sometimes it goes completely into remission, is just gone, and you're fine. Some people very often have had cancer, didn't even know they had cancer, could have had cancer multiple times, and just get over it without even knowing, without ever being diagnosed for it. It's like sometimes people can survive a stroke and never know that they had a stroke, but doctors can tell that you had a stroke. So this sort of thing happens. Prayer doesn't have any effect on this. But if you ignore all the thousands of people who, every one of those children has an army of relatives praying for them, but then you only look at the one guy who did the self-hypnosis, and because because it is a self-hypnosis technique, and I have personal experience with this, he convinces himself to feel good for a minute, and then he dies eventually of the cancer anyway. And you want to take that and say, wow, that was really strange that he hypnotized himself into feeling good and then felt good, and then his cancer went into remission for a stage and then came back and killed him. How amazing a miracle. Sorry, all you kids who died.
Well, like I said, it looked like that he was spared because God had a plan for him to do this, not because God was just being nice.
Bullshit.
That's what it looked like to me.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
Can't prove it, but that's what it looks like to me.
Can't support it in any way. I don't need you to prove it. Can you show me there's any truth to that at all? Any? Can you show me when the cancer went into remission, when the prayer was made? I know exactly how, when you pray to something, if you talk to anything long enough, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be real. You can talk to fake things. It can be a God. It can be your dead relatives. It can be a telepathic communication with your extraterrestrial overlords. You can talk to a bloody volleyball, and eventually it'll start talking back, because that's the way human minds work. That's why the conversion to Christianity is culminated into a single statement, so that when you say this thing that you're trained to experience this great experience, when you say this, I give up to Jesus, whatever. And when people are conditioned to feel that, when they say that, and they say that expecting to feel that, well, then they feel that. Same with me. Same with the guy you're talking about. Everybody that does that, doesn't matter what the religion is. You can do it for Islam, you can do it for Buddhism, you can do it for Hinduism. There's a handful of other different religions, so you have the exact same experience, people reporting it. I remember reading from this girl from, I forget where she was, somewhere in Asia, Thailand. She was in Thailand, and she said that her entire life turned around the moment she accepted Buddha into her life. Are you impressed with your Jesus after hearing that testimony?
Well, about the Buddha? About somebody having the same thing happen to them after Buddha came into their life?
You accept
I would say that in the case of Buddhism, which they believe in general, in good moral things, I think it could have actually have been Jesus. I think that it's possible.
No, it could not have been Jesus. Buddhism is a whole lot older than Christianity, first off. They don't believe in Jesus. Secondly, Jesus was never a fucking God. Third, when you asked me earlier if something is possible, is it possible that God is hiding the supernatural? Yeah. Well, let's discuss what possible means. How do we say whether something is possible? Is everything possible? Is it possible that monkeys might fly out of your ass?
Well, I think
it's possible for the cow to jump over the moon. Is that possible?
I don't think those things are analogous to God.
Are they?
God reaching you.
The question was, is everything possible? Can a cow jump over the moon?
No, it's physically impossible.
It is impossible. So we cannot say that everything is possible. Good. Okay. That's important.
It's also,
you can't say everything is possible. How do we say whether something is possible?
Well, we look for evidence.
What type of evidence? Specific. I'll help you out here.
Okay.
What I've come to is you need a precedent. You need either a precedent or a parallel or a verified phenomenon to indicate that a possibility exists. Otherwise, if you don't have any of the three, you've got nothing to go on. So, do you have for your God who hides everything, but wants us to believe without reason? He wants us to believe known liars without reason, but he's going to hide all the evidence from you. Do you have a precedent, a parallel, or verified phenomenon to indicate that this God you're talking about might have actually done that?
Well, I don't think he wants us to believe in known liars.
So you don't have a precedent, a parallel, or a verified phenomenon, right?
Well, to be verified, it would have to be scientific.
Right. So like with the Big Bang, for example,
so
we have a verified phenomenon. We have the cosmic inflation. We have the galactic redshift, the cosmic microwave background radiation. We have the verified phenomenon that indicates the possibility, right? So there are other things.
Right.
Can this happen? Well, this other thing's very similar happened over here. That would be something like a precedent. So we know that kind of thing can happen, or a parallel, where the same kind of thing happens in this other type instance. So there's nothing to preclude this doing the same thing this other thing did, but you don't have that for God.
You don't have any scientific evidence for.
You ask me if it's possible
and prove in the laboratory.
Okay, so how do we define what a God is? And God is miraculous, right? That's his whole thing, is he's miraculous.
Oh, that leads to something else. You define God as a magical, anthropomorphic, immortal.
Correctly, yes.
Right. Yeah, there was something I was going to ask about that.
Okay, but
I was wondering about when it comes to God being the creator. And it does indeed kind of look like that. If God is the creator, it's kind of like his relation to us is kind of like ants, because we're just like a dust speck in the universe. Sure, you recognize that. So do you think it's possible that an anthropomorphic, and I'm saying possible again, magical anthropomorphic immortal might exist who is not the creator, because we're always assuming that he's the one who created everything?
Do we have a precedent for that?
Well, that who's not the creator. Because the Bible we pray to, not just the Bible, not just
so we don't have any of those things. So we can't say that it is possible.
So we can't say, we could just might as well say God's.
How could I say that it's possible? If I'm going to say something is possible, there's no precedent, there's no parallel, there's no verified phenomenon. That would be lying if I said it's possible. And then we also have to look at how God is defined, right? It's not just the way that I said. Magical is important. We have to look at that, because God is miraculous. And what is a miracle? Miracles and magic share the same definition. Right, so it's the evocation of supernatural forces or entities to control or forecast natural events in ways that are inexplicable by science because they defy the laws of physics, which means that by definition, miracles are physically impossible, and God is impossible by definition. So you're asking me whether it's possible that an impossible being exists.
Well, I just wonder. We were discussing theistic evolution.
You asked me if it's possible. Yeah. That your God exists. No, it is not.
You're saying that he's not.
It's not just that there is no possibility to consider. It's that that he is by definition impossible.
Okay, well, I know you can't prove our God scientifically. You cannot come up with scientific evidence for God.
Nor can you can't falsify it either. Because God could, as you said, if there was a God, the God could hide himself and just be completely inconsistent with everything. Oh, he wants to love you. He wants to have a relationship with you, but he doesn't want to know you. He certainly doesn't want you to know him. You cannot ask him a question and have him give you an answer you did not already know. So there's no God. Flat out, period.
I don't know about that, because prayer, what about him answering prayer?
What about the constant failure of prayer? What about it?
Well, I told you that I've prayed to get moral advice. I don't pray that. Well, I have prayed for people, but
come up with two options. Flip a coin, have the coin decide. It's not a prayer. Doesn't work that way. You just choose which one's going to go which way, and then do whatever the coin said. Well, of course, the coin didn't say that, but then your prayer isn't answered either.
Doesn't give you,
and you're going to get the same result. You get the same results from prayer. Or as Carl Sagan, not Carl Sagan, George Carlin said, pray to Joe Pesci. You get the same results.
You know, there's about these spiritual experiences we were talking about. What about the fact that there's so many of them?
I just told you. Okay, what about the fact that all these people around the world have completely different beliefs, theologies that violently contradict each other? They don't have any kind of consistency at all, except somehow, because we are so very self-centered, we always imagine that we're never really going to die, that somehow we'll come back some way.
That's the
people have a fear of death. So they make up a bunch of different contradictory things to explain how they're going to be reincarnated or how they're going to be reabsorbed into the sphere of cosmic consciousness. That was my thing, by the way. I thought that I was never going to go to heaven. Clearly, heaven doesn't exist. There's no purpose in heaven. I thought I was going to be reabsorbed into a cosmic consciousness. I was much more favoring the Eastern religions. So why do people make up bullshit stories that don't match? Why do people make up bullshit stories that are impossible, not supported by anything, and contradictory, but that can be explained by simple self-hypnosis? Can you explain that?
I think there are cases where people living in Islamic countries have claimed that they've experienced Jesus, that Jesus came into their life.
And you haven't experienced
they were Mohammedan. How about that?
How about people? What about people living in the United States who experience Krishna?
Okay, well, based on what Christian taught
Krishna,
maybe
I know a guy lives not.
Jesus are the same.
I know a guy lives not a mile from me, about a mile down the road. There's a guy who met Bastet, Bast, his goddess.
Yes,
physically showed up in his house.
I think maybe we should do another discussion on all of this.
People make shit up.
I'd like to ask you. I'd really like to ask you about things, but it's going to take too long. It's just going to take way too long.
Yeah, we were supposed to go an hour, and we've almost gone 2.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we should close it up. Had like 185 people watching consistently throughout this entire time.
I thought this would get more viewers.
Yeah. So we didn't talk that much about Ray Comfort, but we have talked about the whole shtick that produced him and the damage that's caused by him and the other minions working with him. Joe Pesci can actually do shit that yeah, George Carlin said that Joe Pesci could actually do shit.
I learned some things about Ray Comfort that I didn't know before, because I didn't know primarily that he was a racketeer, but you've pretty much showed that he's running a racket.
Yep.
I thought he was just mainly worried about, people, about the exodus of the church and everything, and he was
not at all
converts, but it's mainly a racket.
Yeah, they're all grifters. Anyway, thank you very much, Tony.
Okay.
And we will close it up. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for the donations. Do please check if you can. Do please check the links below. Things are tight for all of us, I know, and I have a feeling it's going to get worse. But
okay, pleasure talking to you.